So in the previous video, we'd learned about evolution and natural selection and how evolution is change in a gene pool over time, and natural selection is a mechanism that will allow for adaptation, changing of the gene pool in ways that are directed by that selection for survival and reproduction. So evolution results in this change, and sometimes that can be change that diversifies the variety of organisms, and sometimes it brings them together. So the first type we really look at is the classical type of evolution, which we call divergent evolution, which is also called adaptive radiation. Here we've got the classic example of Darwin studying the finches on the Galapagos Islands, and this tree obviously representing their relations as well as representing a tree. So the Galapagos Islands off the coast of South America are an isolated set of islands, and on different islands, Darwin found different types of finch. When comparing them, he noticed the similarities between them, suggesting that they came from a common ancestor, but also a diversity of coats, and in particular, he looked at beak size. So you can see there are small sharp beaks, short strong ones, medium, curved, thick, thin, all sorts of different variations. And these he determined were probably associated with different food sources available on the different islands, and how the birds' beaks had been adapted to suit those particular different niches that they were in. And so starting from a common ancestor species, they diversified across different habitats to suit them by adaptation. And this is divergent evolution or adaptive radiation. Radiation just being, coming out like the rays of the sun in all sorts of different directions. This happens on a small scale like we see here, but also on a much larger scale. So what we have here is the distribution of marsupials that we see today. Some in North America, South America. Obviously we know that we have plenty of marsupials in Australia and also in New Zealand. And all these different marsupial types are obviously related in some way, because we're aware that they share these features of being marsupials, but they really clearly have different adaptations for their different niches. Some walk on 4 legs, some hop on 2, and there's even flying ones. And part of our understanding of this is that 160 million years ago in the Jurassic period, that South America, North America and Australia were, and Antarctica were linked as part of this supercontinent, and that a common ancestor species may have been spread across here, and that as those became separate islands and separate entities, that the adaptive radiation occurred. So we know that evolution can create new species diverging in different ways for different niches, and that's how the tree of life spreads out. But also we sometimes find very similar looking living species that look as though they may have a common ancestor but don't. And this is an example of convergent evolution, where things are coming together. So when we look at different habitats, we can see here in Africa and here in Asia some very similar landscapes and climates. Same with North America and Australia here. So across the planet there are some fairly consistent ecosystems which would present the same selection pressures for different organisms. And so you often have small foragers or large apex predators, or even flying mammals. Now, all of these are mammals, and so they're related in some way, but the wolf and Tasmanian wolf or Tasmanian tiger are really quite different, this one being a placental mammal and this one being a marsupial. Same with the marsupial mouse and the regular field mouse. So they're actually very distantly related and don't have a recent common ancestor, but have very similar features, because the selection pressures on the wolf and Tasmanian tiger, even on different continents, were quite similar. And so they can be quite similar in appearance, even if they don't have a recent common ancestor, just because of those selection pressures. An even more extreme example of convergent evolution would be swimming animals. And so we can see here 4 different swimming animals that have a lot of similar characteristics because of the selection pressures on them. But obviously a shark is a fish, a dolphin is a mammal, a penguin is a bird, and an ichthyosaur is a reptile. So 4 very different lineages of vertebrates, but very much similar characteristics in terms of this sort of fin here. For a penguin, obviously it's the wing, 3 of them having a dorsal fin as well. But you do see obviously quite a lot of differences in the fact that a shark has gills, whereas the dolphin and the penguin and ichthyosaur breathe with lungs. So they're very different in terms of their lineages, but have a lot of similar characteristics because of adaptation.